Tommy Orange starts this novel off with a poem by Bertolt Brecht. In the dark times, will there also be singing? Yes, there will also be singing. About the dark times. The connection to celebration by singing and celebrating. The indication of dark times is trauma. Referencing such a poem isn't coincidental, and it perfectly grasps the overall tones Orange attempts to portray. While searching for a book that captured and focused on a specific ethnic group, I was immediately drawn to There, a novel by Tommy Orange. As a member of the Cherokee Nation under the Lenni Lenape, I have had the opportunity to learn about my own tribe's experiences throughout their origins on the East Coast. However, I lack any knowledge of those in the Ohlone tribes that participated in the occupation of Alcatraz, or the Cheyenne tribe that still inhabits the Bay Area. Although our culture is large, spread out, and diverse, I believe it's essential to connect with others who may be more outwardly presenting of our ethnic group, and thus experiencing more discrimination. Growing up in the San Francisco area as a white, straight-presenting male, I have had the privilege of not being shamed for how I look. I think it's my duty to my ancestry to understand all of the facets that our culture carries forward into the future. Although fiction, Orange pulls from so many perspectives in this book. He touches on people who don't embrace their culture and those who are culpable of drowning in it. Orange is the son of a Native American ceremony leader. Climbed through the ranks to become a Pulitzer Prize nominee, Orange is one of the best, if not the number one source, for experiences by the Cheyenne population in Oakland in the early 1950s. With such a diverse community, the experiences are truly limitless. This is exactly what drew me to the tribal experience captured in There. Through his writing, Orange encapsulates the struggle of maintaining community amongst a broken indigenous culture in the modern-day Bay Area, in the ways that cultural shame and generational trauma are accentuated through community violence. The story is broken into 4 sections: Remain, Reclaim, Return, and Powwow. Entitled after the journey of rebuilding control over one's ethnic history and the trauma that has brought amongst a shattered culture. Each section bounces between the first-hand lives of different modern-day Native Americans and the history that led them to where they are. Either through blood or interaction, the web of relationships in this story shows the trickling of trauma and how it continues through different generations. I found myself referencing the family tree the author equips us with in the back of the book quite often, even going into previous chapters to remember the events and names of other characters that brought me to where I was reading. Even though I had access to this readily available knowledge, I still found myself lost. I believe Orange does this intentionally, to show the complex system and events and to lose the reader into problems that can't be solved through a single action. The first chapter, Remain, establishes and shows the resilience of people. We open to present day, set in the life of 2 young Native American men. Tony Loneman struggles with his diagnosis of fetal alcohol syndrome, or as he calls it, the DROME. The feelings of desperation amongst his peers, his low intelligence, and the constant references to the choices his mother made while pregnant with him bring us closer to Tony's passion and to who he is as a character. Tony connects with his drug supplier, Octavio, through their mutual love for their grandmothers. Unfortunately, he owes Octavio money, which culminates in his agreeing to help rob the Oakland Powwow, a community Tony has contributed to as a regaled dancer for many years. This plan foreshadows the climax of the novel. The section then follows with Dean Oxendine, an amateur filmmaker inspired by his late uncle. Dean is granted money by a cultural arts committee in order to tell the stories of Native people in the Bay Area. Remain finishes with the stories of Opal Bearshield and Edwin Black, both of which are faced with the very real events of approaching maturity. Opal experiences the rape of her sister and her mother dying, and Edwin with the neglect of realizing his shortcomings through instant gratification and poor habits. Reclaim brings the reader to Bill Davis and Calvin Johnson. This section's title perfectly captures both characters' intentions, reclaiming control of their lives. Bill's own consolidation lies in his past, through his wild behavior that led him to being discharged from the military and eventually incarcerated to working a steady job providing for his girlfriend and her son, Edwin. Bill struggles with the nuance of the world, such as technology or understanding the new, younger generation. Calvin Johnson is introduced as a struggling young adult, enveloped in the threat of owing money to the same drug dealer as Tony, and joining the plan to rob the powwow. The author then brings us to Jackie Redfeather, the estranged sister of Opal Bearshield, attending a substance abuse meeting. There, she is forced to face her past as the meeting is led by her rapist, Harvey. This connects to the closing character, the oldest of Jackie's grandsons, Orville Redfeather. Custody over the grandsons has been placed in the hands of an aged Opal Bearshield who, through her rough past and her experiences with the occupation of Alcatraz, resents any connection Orville and his brothers have to their culture. Orville goes against his great-aunt's wishes, listening to native music and secretly planning to attend the powwow with the loose change that he and his brothers collect from various public fountains. The third section, entitled Return, introduces Thomas, Frank, Daniel Gomez, and Blue. Each faces struggles that arise through their want for fulfillment. Thomas, son of a native medicine man and a Catholic white mother, finds his fulfillment through his drumming. Unfortunately, Thomas's lack of fulfillment is filled by alcohol. This leads to Thomas being fired from his custodial job at the Indian Center. Daniel's contribution to the story comes from his insight in technology, a common theme throughout the novel. His fulfillment comes from his tech-savvy knowledge, but unfortunately is used to create a 3D printed gun to help Octavio in return for monetary compensation. Finally, Blue is introduced to the audience as Jackie's first daughter, given to the adoption system due to the circumstances of her conception. Her search for identity brings her back to her native heritage, allowing her to work and meet other Native Americans. Blue moves to Oklahoma and marries Paul, who eventually devolves into a degrading abuser. Blue hatches a plan to return to Oakland and escape her daily violence. The story culminates in each character's collective goal, making it to the big Oakland powwow. But what happens once there, I'll leave up to you to find out. Throughout the book, many of the themes correlate with what we've touched on in this course. The prevalence of ethnic erasure, even by people who are part of such culture, made me connect with class diversity, social stratification, and the overall generational trauma stemming from oppression that directly and indirectly affects the story's characters. An excellent example of such is during Return. The loss of identity that Blue experiences through her youth can be attributed directly to Jackie's choice of relinquishing her to the adoption system. This, in turn, can be connected to the occupation of Alcatraz, which in turn was fueled by native hate of the government system, which was fueled by the displacement of their people. Quote, "I knew I wasn't white, but not all the way. Because while my hair is dark and my skin is brown, when I look in the mirror, I see myself from the inside out. And inside, I feel as white as the long, white-shaped throw pillow that my mom always made me keep on my bed, even though I never used it." End quote. Erasure of culture is most times intentional. The government displacing individuals, the kidnapping and killing of native women, but this shows that it can also be unintentional. The leftover results in breaking down and scapegoating a large community, putting natives into positions of little opportunity, making the wage gap and class diversity even more prominent. Another quote that captures the scenes of discrimination that plagued the Native Americans through the initial colonization of Americas. Quote, "The Indian head in the jar, the Indian head on a spike were like flags flown, to be seen, cast broadly. Just like the Indian head test pattern was broadcast to sleeping Americans as we set sail from our living rooms over the ocean blue-green glowing airwaves to the shores, the screens of the New World." This connects to our modules on race and systematic inequality. Institutional racism has been prominent since the beginning. It set in stone the norm for a society that continues to fail its people. Mentioning the Indian head test in this passage shows that things have not changed since those antiquated times. Tommy Orange portrays the modern Native Americans and their ancestors perfectly, which is the result of Orange having real experiences with the themes he writes about. The poverty that so many natives go through today is due to the ways their parents and their parents' parents were oppressed. They need to socioeconomically sprint in the world, finding ways to provide for their families or numb their pain. He does this by putting the audience at the whim of the character's circumstances, manifesting in Jackie and Harvey's addiction, Calvin's drug dealing for money, and Orville and his brother's search for culture without any support or funds. I would definitely give this book a thumbs up. Tommy Orange is an extremely relatable author, and he connects with his audience through true-to-life interactions. I think his knowledge of his culture, along with his storytelling skills, come together to create a great narrative on social disparity and communal trauma. Growing up in the Bay Area, I too got to see situations or people that reminded me of many of the things I saw in this novel. The candid moments of struggle or addiction really resonated with me on a personal level. The main lesson I took away was the need for support in many minority communities, especially those altered by systematic racism. Without such, the disparity between racial groups will continue forward. There needs to be true action to create community. The importance of maintaining and cherishing culture is huge in creating a safe space for healing. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you give There a read. It's a good book. See you later.